Hello, everyone. Welcome back to EF Live, our new show coming at you straight from Empire Flippers. See, I'm even wearing Empire Flippers gear here. And so, this is the show that we're going to come at you every week to give you tips on on online businesses. We're going to be covering a wide range of topics. We want to do a little series of each. So, this month, last week, this week, and then the next two are going to be our little FBA, Amazon FBA series. And this week, we're going to be covering Amazon FBA bookkeeping, everything you need to know about P&Ls, everything you need to know about, should you hire a bookkeeper, and, things like that. We're going to get into it, and we've also got some software recommendations that can help you with everything. But before we get to it, this week I have Andy Alloway on with me. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jake. Yeah, life is good. In Medellin, Colombia at the moment, and the sun is shining. So, yeah, can't complain. How are things with
Things
you?
are things are good. I am in Orlando. Let me take a look at my window. It is overcast and not sunny, but things are going pretty good. So I guess the first thing that we should do is we should introduce ourselves for anyone who are unfamiliar with who we are. So
Sure.
so my name is Jake Davis, obviously, and I was brought on to the Empire Flippers team about 9 months ago. If you've listened to any of the seller interviews that are done on the listings, anytime in the last 9 months, you'll have heard my voice. Hello, this is the face to the voice, and so I am a soon to be graduated, soon to be alumni of the University of Central Florida for electrical engineering, and let's see. I am engaged. I have a wonderful fiance. We will be getting married in December. Some of my, I what do I do outside of Empire Flippers? I also stream on Twitch playing Legend of Zelda speedruns. So if you know what that is, it's pretty fun. Other than that, I like to walk. I like exercise. I love food. Andy, what do you got going on? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, of course. Yeah. So, I'm Andy. I'm from the UK, town in the south of the UK called Basingstoke. I've been at Empire Flippers for just coming up to a year now. And I basically run the operations side of the business. So, that encompasses our vetting process, kind of general customer service for buyers and sellers, and the migration process as well. So, yeah, the physical transfer of the assets over. So yeah, things are busy at the moment. We're hiring, we're training new guys, expanding the team. So yeah, things are hectic. Outside of Empire Flippers, being English, I'm a big football or soccer fan. My team is Portsmouth or Pompey. So anyone that knows anything about British soccer or football will no doubt have plenty of sympathy for me. And other than that, I like to play a bit of golf as well. But yeah, distinctly average at that. But yeah, it's fun all the same. So
Distinctly average at it. What do you generally shoot?
I mean, I play off about a 20
Okay.
handicap. So anything sub 100 is around I'm happy with,
The
basically.
so I haven't golfed in a couple years now. I love golf though. It's expensive and I don't really have anyone to go with, is why I haven't
Yeah.
been getting out there. But when I did play, the best I ever shot was an 86, which is under bogey. So I mean, I was pretty stoked
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, for sure. That's good golf. Yeah, I haven't played a great deal in the last year with traveling around and stuff, but yeah, definitely when I'm back in the UK, I like to try and grab a few rounds of
Yeah.
golf.
So can you just go ahead and take a minute and really just kind of overview everything that we're going to be talking about today?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to start off pretty basic. We'll just kind of talk about financial statements in general, so P&Ls, balance sheets, stuff like that. And then we're going to look at some of the specifics of kind of why you should have a P&L, why it's useful for your business, what sort of decisions it can help you make, and how you can manipulate the data. And we'll drill down on some FBA specifics as well. So There's certain things in the reporting that Amazon gives you through Seller Central, which is both kind of helpful for P&Ls, and there's some challenges as well there. We'll kind of touch on some of the online tools and pieces of software that are available to make your life easier. And then I think we'll kind of close up with just some final kind of takeaways and yeah, things you can incorporate into your bookkeeping for FBA today.
Yeah, and another thing that I want to mention is that so we're going to go through our content, we're going to go through the bookkeeping topics that we want to cover, and then afterward we're going to be having a Q&A session. So if you have any questions that come up during the show, whether it be about us, whether it be about Empire Flippers, definitely if it's about bookkeeping and P&Ls and anything like that we cover, feel free, post them in the comment section on Facebook or on the comment section on YouTube, and we'll try to get to all of them. We'll definitely be grabbing some questions there at the end. And then also something we want to do is we want to run through a listing that we have on Empire Flippers that is an FBA business to, we want to talk about the good things that this business has. We want to talk about, things that you can learn and, use to grow your own FBA business. And, we just kind of want to highlight an FBA business and tell you what we think of it. So anyway, with all of that said, let's go ahead and, dive into, the slides that we have. So
cool.
As you can see, again, here we go. FBA bookkeeping is our topic today. And so P&L Basics. What is a P&L? Andy?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, a P&L is basically a financial statement that gives you a view of the past, predominantly the past performance of your business. So, it's typically a spreadsheet, and it will run over a time period, say a year broken down by months. And then a P&L is going to give you a breakdown of all your different income streams at the top, and then all of your different expenses below that. Typically, the expenses will be broken out into like two sections. So normally you'll have expenses directly related to the cost of the product, cost of goods sold, any shipping, anything like that, as the directly below the income. And then below that, you'll have kind of operating expenses as well. So that could be employees, that could be the cost of your domain, anything like that. But basically, it's a P&L is a document that lets you take a look at the health of your business, basically from a financial point of view. Make sure that you're making the money that you think you are. You'll often hear it referred to, or occasionally hear it referred to, as an income statement as well. Profit and loss, income statement, they're exactly the same thing.
Yeah, so Andy, I guess a question that I want to pose to you before we keep going and talk about, there are a couple different types of P&Ls, and before we get to that though, should every kind of business have one of these, or is that only something that an online business needs to have?
No, definitely not online only. I mean, a profit and loss is the standard financial document that all of the FTSE companies, the biggest companies in the world, will be using to report their quarterly earnings and and just generally give an overview of their business to shareholders and stuff like that. So profit and losses are as old as businesses pretty much, and definitely not exclusive for online.
Yeah, so now talking about the two main methods, we have cash-based and accrual-based. So, walk us through the difference between them.
Sure, okay. So they're both perfectly valid methods of accounting. Neither one is superior, but the main difference between the two is cash-based, as the name implies. Numbers get recognized in the period when the money physically either enters or leaves your bank account. So if in February 2018, Amazon pay me $1,000 into my account, and then when it hits my bank account, that is when it gets logged in the P&L. And the same is true of expenses as well. So if I place an order with a factory in China, when I physically pay that supplier the money and it leaves my account is when it would be registered as an expense, basically. Cash-based accounting, kind of really common in smaller businesses, sole traders, things like that, basically.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess talking about the two methods then, obviously, they're different, they both work, and I mean, I guess the takeaway is that different kinds of businesses will want to use the different methods. But before we get into, we're obviously gearing this towards Amazon FBA. So there's a choice here which will benefit you more with an Amazon FBA business. But before we talk about that, I mean, I guess we really want to hammer home why you want one for your business. It helps you make good decisions. Like Andy was saying, the profit and loss statement really is just, it's been around in business for a long time because it highlights what's going well in the business, how much money are you making, and it just kind of gives you a statement of, just how things are going. Someone can look at your P&L and tell whether the business is doing well or it's been doing poorly. It's a good indicator of the health of your business, and when getting it evaluated, it's also a good tool in doing that. So, I mean, but Andy, what doesn't a P&L do?
I think one thing to bear in mind is that although a P&L is kind of the daddy of financial documents, it's not the only financial document. There's a couple of things that a P&L doesn't do as well as some others. And the two other main documents that you'll come across are either a balance sheet, and a balance sheet is basically a sum of all of the assets of the business and a sum of all of the liabilities. So particularly if you have a business that has inventory, a balance sheet can be a really handy tool to kind of get an idea of inventory value and how that counts towards assets.
Yeah. So would you use the balance sheet and the P&L together?
You definitely can do. Yeah. Day to day, you're going to use the P&L more, but you might put a balance sheet together once a quarter or something like that, potentially more regularly. And like I say, so one way to think about it is that a P&L is great for viewing the history of the business. I can look at the last year of my business, see where my incomes come from, and see where my expenses have gone. A balance sheet is much more a kind of snapshot in time. So like, how does my business look right at this moment, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it right there. The P&L is what's been going on for the last year. A good statement of how the business performed. Did you make money? Did you lose money? What, how are you doing? And the balance sheet is kind of a right now, how are the numbers looking? Are we up? Are we down? Do we have inventory? Things like that.
Yeah, exactly right. And one other to mention as well, which is kind of beyond the scope of this webinar, but just to touch on, is a cash flow statement as well. Another thing that a P&L doesn't do is it doesn't give you an idea of cash flow, okay? Particularly if you are doing a P&L in accrual form. It's kind of easy to look at a P&L and say, okay, in January, I sold $10,000 worth of products. I had $5,000 worth of expenses. So my net income is $5,000, and that's correct. But it doesn't take into account when you're going to receive that money, when you're going to have to pay suppliers, which could be before you receive it. And of course, cash is king in a business, right? So that's another really important thing to consider as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, now let's kind of gear this towards the FBA side of things. So, we're talking about Amazon FBA, and we already kind of outlined the difference between a cash-based and an accrual-based methods in compiling your P&L document. So, when talking about FBA, what kind of method do you want?
Okay, so with FBA, and to be honest, with any kind of inventory-based business, accrual-based is going to give you a far more accurate picture of the business. And the reason for that is that it kind of irons out some of the lumps. So for example, if I set up my FBA business and I need to order $5,000 worth of stock or worth of inventory, then in a cash-based system, that would be a $5,000 expense in whatever month I pay for it, right? With an accrual-based system, then the way that we would do that is we recognize the cost of the product in the month that the product actually sold, right? So if I sold 100 units of something at $10, you can keep the math super simple, then in that month I would recognize a $1,000 expense rather than the whole cost of whatever inventory was purchased.
And so, I mean, Amazon does provide thorough detail on the income and expenses that your business has when dealing with Amazon FBA, correct? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah,
So
yeah.
does Amazon provide enough detail in order to be able to compile the P&L? I can't talk. The P&L, or are there other sources of that data that you need?
Sure. I mean, particularly if your business is FBA exclusively, then Amazon provides a good chunk of the data that you need for sure. You're going to need to add in your product costs to kind of calculate the cost of goods, and any operating expenses you have outside of Amazon. So, maybe you have an employee who does a certain amount of hours a week. That cost you'll have to add in. But Amazon gives you a good amount of the detail. And uh, when you look at the transaction report or the summary report in Seller Central, it really gives you a good breakdown of your income as well. So it kind of tells you how much of it was product sales, how much you got returned, so you can keep an eye on returns rate. But yeah, Amazon pays you on things like shipping credits, gift wrap credits and stuff. So it gives you a real thorough breakdown of the income. And the same is true of expenses as well. So that's all great
Mm-hmm.
information that you're going to want to reflect in your
Yeah,
P&L.
and I mean, I think at its core, the P&L is just, as we said before, it's a document that can really determine how people looking at your business, see the business, especially if you're trying to sell it. For instance, on Empire Flippers, having a detailed P&L document can really just be a good it's a good thing to have when trying to sell your business because it outlines how the business is doing. So, with how the business is doing, I mean, sometimes with an Amazon FBA business, you're selling products. Sometimes you have refunds and returns. So, I mean, how should you mark those off?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of things here. I mean, firstly, the P&L lets you keep an eye on what your returns rate is. Sure, so if you know that you sold $10,000 and you have $500 of returns, you can compare that month to month and see if your return or refund rate is increasing or decreasing. And that gives you the data that you can go to your supplier with. It could be indicative of like a quality fault in the product or something like that if your returns rate is increasing. So it gives you the information to go and have that conversation. I think as well, one thing to just bear in mind with how you kind of treat those in the data is, when you're looking at how many units you sold, that's not always going to be as straightforward as sales minus refunds, because depending on those refund and return reasons, you may still have had a cost of goods expense on those units if they were faulty, or you took it back for some sort of customer service reason, then you may still have had to pay for the
Mm-hmm.
product. So yeah, that's just one thing to look out
Yeah,
for.
and another thing in terms of, just costs and things that you need to account for when running a business, assuming that you're doing any sort of marketing, uh, you know,
Mm.
paid advertising, whether you are doing Facebook marketing, paying for those Facebook ads. If you are on, if you have a business, like in addition to Amazon FBA, if you have your own e-commerce store, and so you try to have good SEO, you run Google ads and everything like that. I mean, that's money as well. So when you're paying to run this advertising, you want to be able to ensure that you're getting your money back. The money that you're putting into the advertising is earning you enough in sales to account for the expenses. And I
For
mean,
sure.
the P&L is just a good place to document that. And do you have any tips when it comes to marking down the, how do you see exactly the return on the advertising?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to mention on advertising. So, firstly, with FBA businesses, a lot of your advertising expense is going to be within the Amazon ecosystem. Okay, so Amazon pay-per-click ads, and typically they're very easy to pull out of the Amazon reporting, particularly if you pay for them via your Seller Central account. But if you do pay separately by credit card or something, then that might be something you need to check elsewhere and add in. And yeah, like you say, you can check your advertising to income or to revenue ratio each month, and you can compare that. Last month I spent 30% of my income on advertising, and this month it went up to 40%, and it just allows you to do a bit of digging into that and kind of see what the reasons
Yeah,
might be.
and I guess before we move on, I just kind of want to stress that, you know, all the time with Empire Flippers, we see these businesses, these great businesses that, due to just having poor documentation, it either hurts the sale, it either is costing them money, like, going back to the advertising, for instance, if if let's say you're putting $1,000 a month into Facebook ads and Amazon pay-per-click, and you are mistaken in that, the Amazon, maybe you think that the Amazon and the Facebook are performing just as well and you're getting your money back, but maybe you're getting 3 times the amount of traffic, which then you can convert into revenue. Maybe you're getting that from Facebook and you're not getting anything from the Amazon pay-per-click ads. So I guess something that we see often here at Empire Flippers is just businesses that don't have amazing P&Ls, which can hurt the business in the long run. Do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We see sellers who kind of are running fantastic businesses, almost kind of despite not having a great grasp of the numbers. And you just think if they had, real accurate P&Ls, some of the decisions they could be making to make those businesses even better would be crazy,
yeah.
right?
And it again, coming back to selling the business, when a prospective buyer comes along and they want to just see a snapshot of, hey, how is the business doing? How has the business performed for the last year? I mean, what better way to look at that than a P&L?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I think that's not a bad way to think about how to construct a P&L generally. Is kind of if somebody was evaluating my business or looking to buy my business, like what information would they want in there to make their decision? That's the kind of information that can help you make decisions.
Yeah, so I guess the big question then is, this stuff is hard. I mean, it's not, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. We wouldn't, need to have this webinar here. So I guess the question is, do you learn how to do it yourself, or do you hire a bookkeeper to compile these records for you?
Sure. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to that question, but there probably are some things that you can think about both in favor and against that. I mean, some people just aren't numbers people, right? And the kind of the stress and then thing to think about, free up time to think about other things.
Hey, Andy, I lost you. You disconnected there at the word stressed. Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we just kind of recap there? So, I mean, do you feel like people should learn how to do it themselves, or should they hire a bookkeeper?
Again, so I mean, it's going to depend on the individual. There's pros and cons to both. I think to go back to the stress point, if some people just really aren't numbers people, and the energy that they put towards this, maybe that could be used somewhere else in their business. And if you outsource to a bookkeeper, I mean that's their gig, right? They're going to do that with a real high level of accuracy. And they're gonna know what they're doing with P&Ls. They're gonna be really familiar.
Yeah, I mean, you don't go to someone who's never touched a pipe before to fix your sink. You get a plumber, you get someone who's experienced with it. But on the other hand, let's say you're someone who really wants to learn how to fix your sink. If you hire a plumber every time, then you're not going to be as experienced with it. So going back to the bookkeeping, if you use a bookkeeper, I mean, they may not know your business super well, and it may also, maybe you want to learn how to do it, I mean, do you see a con in hiring a bookkeeper in that regard?
Yeah, there are definitely some things to think about. You're absolutely right that, bookkeeping is a valuable skill in business, no doubt about it. And I think you'll probably learn some stuff about your business just by digging through the numbers, the whole process of putting one together, that maybe you wouldn't learn if you just kind of had the completed document put in front of you. So I'd say that's something to think about. And the other thing, particularly more pertinent to kind of online business and FBA businesses, is not all bookkeepers are going to be familiar with online businesses, and particularly FBA businesses. And I speak to sellers sometimes who tell me that kind of the time it takes to instruct and walk their bookkeeper through putting it together is not actually that much time saved from just doing it themselves.
Yeah, but I guess on the other hand, though, you could just find a bookkeeper who is familiar with Amazon FBA.
For sure, yeah, and they're out there.
So I guess just a question that I want to have, a hypothetical situation, you Andy Alloway are running an Amazon FBA business. What are you doing for this? Do you have your own bookkeeper or do you do it yourself?
I think I would go the DIY
Mm.
route. I'd probably find some decent software tools to help me out, but yeah, I'm a bit of a numbers guy, a spreadsheet guy, so I'd be pretty happy and comfortable going through that
I
stuff,
think
I
it goes
think.
back to what you said before, where if it's something that if you want to be in it, if you want to know what is exactly is going into the P&L, if you want to have the knowledge yourself, do it yourself. If you think, okay, the P&L is something I need, I don't know how to do it, it's something that I want to be done well, but my strong suit in running a business is not in accounting. My strong suit is not in
Mm.
compiling the P&L. My strong suits are elsewhere. So, I mean, maybe then it's worth getting a bookkeeper to be able to handle that for you. Because, I mean, the worst thing that you could do, and obviously it just comes with time and experience, but a bad thing would be to, be trying to do it yourself and learn how to do it and end up doing it really, really poorly.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, bad data is going to lead to bad
Hmm.
decisions, right? So I would definitely agree that if it's not your area of competence at all, then it's going to be worth involving an expert to help
Yeah,
you out there.
and something that you mentioned when you said you personally would go the do it yourself route, is that you would want to be using software. So, I guess before we dive into individual softwares that we, want to talk about today, what kind of software are you talking about? Like what would they handle for you?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, there's some great accounting software out there generally. You know, probably the two most famous are QuickBooks or Xero. These work for any type of business, online or offline. You kind of upload your invoices and your transactions into it, and they'll do the books for you and spit the numbers out. So they're a good starting point. There's some challenges with using an accounting software like that with an FBA business, and really that kind of centers around the fact that they're not built for the volume of transactions that FBA businesses tend
Hmm.
to have, and so if they're kind of not set up correctly, then sometimes using those tools, particularly when it comes to kind of tying the P&L up with the reporting that you get out of Amazon, it can actually be really tricky and quite time consuming.
So, is using something like QuickBooks, how different is that than using a bookkeeper?
I think so. It's going to be using something like QuickBooks or software like that is going to give you something that you kind of have more access to on an ongoing basis. So, maybe a bookkeeper sends your numbers at the end of a month or at the end of the quarter or something like that. In QuickBooks, if depending on how you use it, but you could have numbers updated daily so that you can see where you are in the current month as well, and kind of give you other ways of manipulating the data, which might not be so easy with a bookkeeper.
Yeah, and I think just something worth mentioning is that going back to what he said before, where this stuff, you got to make sure you set it up correctly. Same with the do it yourself. Same with the hiring a bookkeeper, and then now with software handling your books. If it's not set up correctly, that could hurt your decision making in terms of continuing to sell this product, continuing to do this kind of marketing, or when it comes time to sell it, it may hurt the sale if things are not represented accurately.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, specifically when you're talking about FBA businesses, have to bear in mind that a lot of these businesses will have multi-product, multi-country and currency, and it doesn't take long for those kind of levels of complication to stack
Mm-hmm.
up pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I guess we have a couple more software that a little bit more, a few more products that we want to talk about here. But before we do that, I just want to ask you, being the bookkeeper guy, yourself, or being the accounting guy yourself, what mistakes do you see FBA business owners make when it comes to compiling P&L?
Um, I think, one of the big ones we see is not grouping things in the same way that Amazon do. And this can be particularly true if FBA is only one of a few income streams. So maybe you've got a Shopify store as well. Maybe you've got sell some bits on eBay. Trying to group all of the Amazon expenses and income into just one or two rows, that can kind of make things a little unclear, make it tough to make decisions on, because you can't see exactly which bit is influencing it, basically. Um, yeah, that's the main one. And I would say another thing just to watch out for as well is, really make sure that you calculate your product landed costs accurately. So, not just the cost of whatever the actual product is, but any shipping incurred from say China or wherever you're sourcing from. Any labeling you do outside of Amazon's costing, if you use third-party logistics, there's some of these costs that are outside of the Amazon ecosystem that can sometimes be overlooked.
Yeah, and so you said something earlier that I wanted to touch upon, a couple minutes ago. You mentioned different currencies. How does selling in different marketplaces, whether it be, a business selling on Amazon US, Amazon Canada, they're selling on Amazon US, Amazon UK. If you are selling on in these different countries, how does that impact the P&L?
Sure. Yeah. So, firstly, from a broader business sense, when a business is selling in multiple locations, that's great for a potential buyer and obviously great to expand into new markets. It does cause some more challenges when putting the P&L together. Typically the way that we tend to kind of keep it as clear as possible is to have a kind of a P&L in the local currency of each territory that you're selling into. And then you can kind of pull them all together with some conversion rates into kind of one summary sheet. But again, it's really important to be able to look at the data both ways, right? So you want to see how you're doing in specific countries, but you also want to be able to roll it up into one number to see, how is the business doing generally.
So just to kind of recap, you feel like in that situation, you should have multiple P&L statements. You should have a P&L statement for US. You should have a P&L statement for Canada. You should have a P&L statement for UK. And then you should take all of those individual statements and compile them into a single document representing the history of the business.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah. And it comes back to kind of what you can do with the data, right? If you just and everything wrapped up, it's really difficult to make any local decisions you might want to make. So having them split out is beneficial.
Yeah. So going back to the software that we're talking about before, they're A2X and Unify Enterprise. How can those softwares help you? We've already covered the accounting software. What can these do for you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, QuickBooks and Xero can both be really great options for doing your bookkeeping for FBA businesses. But the process of getting the information out of Seller Central and into one of those tools is straightforward. So these are just a couple of examples of pieces of software that basically act as that intermediary. They take the information out of Seller Central and kind of automatically plug it into your accounting software, just to reduce the work required.
So is this something that when you set up, you need to go in and give them access to your Amazon account? Do you need to sync that up, or do you how does that process work?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You'll kind of sync it up on day one. It's normally pretty painless, and then it will just run in the background from them basically and populate your accounting software. So A2X is kind of specifically for Xero, and Unify Enterprise can do Xero, QuickBooks, and probably some others.
So
I'm sure.
You would use this software in conjunction with other software like QuickBooks and
Right.
Xero.
That's correct.
So
Yeah.
something that we spoke about last week on the episode 1. Again, if you are new, if you just popped in, this is EF Live. We're going to be coming at you every week, talking about tips with online businesses. And this episode, last week's, and the next couple are going to be on talking about Amazon FBA and things that you should know. Last week we spoke about just general software tools that can help you out, and one of the tools that we spoke about was an accounting software. And if you got a chance to tune in, we really dove into detail about how it works, and we showed a little video. And today I just kind of want to recap it. Andy, what do you know about Fetcher?
Yeah, so Fetcher kind of spans both of the two categories that we just spoke about then. So it does all of the going into Seller Central, pulling all of your data, your transactions on an ongoing basis, and then it brings it together in their dashboard basically. So I think a couple of benefits of this. The first one is the data, the way it's presented in the dashboard, probably even easier to manipulate than a profit and loss, to kind of make some decisions on. But then you can export it into traditional financial documents like a profit and loss, stuff like that. And the Fetcher guys, this is the same team behind kind of Jungle Scout, Splitly, companies like that. I mean, these guys know Amazon FBA inside out.
Yeah, and this is just a tool. If you click over to Fetcher right now, Empire Flippers, we don't get a cut of that. We just really feel like these are tools that can help you, because something that we see is FBA owners struggling with compiling the P&Ls, because there are so many different factors that go into it. And using tools like these is kind of a middle ground between doing it yourself and hiring a bookkeeper. And we feel like using something like this is, it's a good idea. If you're not a numbers person and don't want to do it yourself, using a software like Fetcher can really help you out and help your business in the long run. So we have all of this software that we've outlined. Andy, do you feel like you should use the two softwares? Is it going to be a case by case basis? Will some businesses want to use Xero and A2X, or will some businesses want to use Fetcher, or is it is there one solution that is better?
Sure. I think my opinion would probably be that it's going to be case by case. I mean, if FBA was my sole marketplace, then I'd be signing up for Fetcher, no doubt about it. For a business with maybe multiple channels and FBA is just one portion of what we do, then something like an A2X and Xero can be really handy to bring that portion in and add it into the rest of your accounting, basically.
Yes. Okay. So let's kind of close out here. What are your closing thoughts on accounting, bookkeeping, P&Ls for FBA businesses?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just a couple of things, and these ones really aren't FBA specific, to be honest, but I think the biggest one is just start putting some sort of P&L together. Get some sort of process in, whether you have a tool that pulls it automatically or you update it at the end of the month, whatever works. But yes, kind of planning to fill it all in at the end of the year. Not only is that going to be the worst job in the world, but you're going to miss out on a ton of data that you could be using to make decisions during that financial year as well. So yeah, get started. Putting it together would be my number one. I think.
And just to kind of add on to what he said there, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a college student, and when you have an assignment and you have a month to do it, if you try to cram it in until that last night or two, you're probably not going to get it done. And if you do get it done, you're not going to get an A on it. So if you plan it accordingly and do it throughout the time that you have, it's going to come out a lot better. So if you plan your P&L, if you get it done, if you get the processes set up, whether it be you're going to do it yourself, if you get a bookkeeper assigned, if you set up the software to just handle it as time goes on, and you add to it as time goes on, that'll be a lot easier for you, and it'll be a lot smoother than if at the end of the year you want to go through, or you come in and try to sell the business. So you want to you panic and try to get these documents put together. I mean, it's more difficult to get that information because it's not the present information that you're getting from Amazon's resources that they're giving you and everything like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think one thing I'd say on that as well, I mean, for anyone that is kind of getting to the stage where they're thinking about selling their business or anything like that, I mean, if you don't have P&L in place at the moment, then don't let that put you off getting in touch with us, because we got a team here who are spending their whole days creating and going through and combing through P&Ls. And one of my guys will be more than happy to jump on the phone with you and kind of talk you through the best ways to go about it.
And another just tip that we have is plan your inventory. If you look back over the course of a year, you may notice that there's a gap in your, the profits that you're making. And sometimes it comes down to the fact that your business is growing and you didn't plan accordingly with your inventory. So, I mean, just a tip that we have is keep that in mind, and try to plan your inventory appropriately so that you don't either have too much stock or you don't have especially out of stock, because then if people go to buy, I mean, they can't buy if if you don't have any products to sell.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, planning your inventory is obviously a huge, huge part of FBA, and ensuring you don't go out of stock is no doubt easier said than done. But particularly when it comes to P&Ls, I mean, it's so obvious when there is an out of stock period, because you can see
Mm-hmm.
kind of big gaps in the income and stuff like that, and that's just not ideal. Particularly if you are getting towards a place where you want to sell your business, anything
Yeah,
like that.
so as we said before, we're going to be doing a Q&A after. Any questions you guys have, feel free, type them in Facebook or YouTube chat now. We'll get to them. Before we do, though, we want to just go ahead and talk about a listing that we have on Empire Flippers. It's an Amazon FBA business, and we just kind of want to run through some stuff and just talk about some of the opportunities that this business has, some risks, and just general things to keep in mind when you yourself are running an Amazon FBA business. So the business that we're going to be talking about is listing 44089. If go to empireflippers.com/listing/44089, you can find more information about this business. It is an Amazon FBA business in the pet accessories niche. The business has been making $30,793 in revenue, $8,636 in profit a month, every month, and that's built on an average of 12 months. So over the course of the last year, this business is making about $8,500 in profit. And something that this business does really well is it is on the different Amazon platforms. It is on Amazon US, Canada, UK. But I guess something that I want to touch with that is an opportunity that I see is to diversify off of the Amazon platform. Try to get on platforms like Walmart, like eBay, because I mean, a potential risk that comes when you are an Amazon business, and I don't see it being likely. It's just something I want to mention. Amazon is one of the biggest businesses in the world. They're probably not going anywhere anytime soon. But since you are putting all of your eggs in the Amazon basket, try to diversify a little bit. And this would be advice for any FBA business. Start a Shopify site. Try to get on Walmart, eBay, different platforms, if for no other reason than to give yourself more of a presence online, which makes you look more like a legitimate business, which helps you, sell more products. Andy, what do you see when you look at this business?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that I really like about this business. First of all, I like the niche, pet accessories. I've got a dog. I can tell you from my girlfriend's shopping bills that people will spend money on their pets. Exactly like you said, it's in a number of different locations. It's got quite a lot of SKUs as well. Both of those things diversify the risk, so that's really great. And I completely agree with kind of getting something up and running outside of Amazon for all FBA businesses. And this business already has some URLs set up and running, and yeah, someone could come in and really kind of move that forward quickly, I think.
Not to try to sit here and sell you. I'm not on the sales team, but something that is really cool about this business and a lot of the businesses that we sell on Empire Flippers is that it's making a consistent $8,000 plus a month in profit. That's money that you put in your pocket. That's after you've paid your bookkeeper, after you've paid all of your expenses. That's going in your pocket. So if you just want to sit back and continue to do what the business owner is currently doing in terms of marketing, in terms of, you know, how much time they're putting in, if they're writing any content or anything like that. I mean, it's you're going to keep making money, and if you want to grow the business, there are all these different ways to do that, which is something that is really cool about all of these businesses. So something that we've promised, and it's definitely time for. So let's go ahead and transition into our Q and
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the one way you can think about it is that QuickBooks Zero, I mean, they are straight up accounting,
Hmm.
bookkeeping software, right? They crunch the numbers. Fetcher is, I mean, that's Amazon software. They're Amazon guys, and there's a lot more analytical power in that, the way you can kind of manipulate the data within the dashboard, not just the financial documents, basically, to help you make decisions.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you are an Amazon FBA business, Fetcher is everything rolled into one. Whereas these other software, this other software like Xero and QuickBooks, they are accounting software that can help you run any business.
Right, that's
Yeah,
exactly it.
Andy, do you got another question for us?
Yeah, cool. So a question here from Drew, who was asking whether he could submit his business using Cash Cow Pro as well to do the P&L. And I mean, the short answer is yes. Cash Cow Pro probably closer to a. It's got some good analytical data in it as well. Lets you do some kind of check results on A/B testing, I
Hmm.
think, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the short answer is we touched on a couple of tools, some of the well-known ones. Cash Cow Pro is another really well-known one, and there are plenty of others as well. So yeah, absolutely.
What was the exact question? Can he list his business? Like,
Yeah, so kind of so in a similar way to Fetcher, you can pull a P&L out of the back of Cash Cow Pro, and he's basically asking, can he use the output from that to submit his business?
oh,
Was the
to
question.
submit it on Empire Flippers or something like that. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay, I
that's
got
it.
you. I
Yeah,
understand. Yeah, so,
yeah,
I mean, just want to stress so hard is that having these documents, however you compile them, having accurate profit and loss statements can just really help you sell your business. If you, I mean, just think about it from a buyer's perspective. If they're looking at a business and they have to kind of jump through a bunch of hoops to get this information, and then they look at a different business and all of this information is just laid out super nicely, how much money they're spending, how much money they're earning, what's performing well, what advertising is doing well, what products are doing well. It's just from a buyer's perspective. I mean, it makes more sense to be more interested when you can get all the details up front rather than having to jump through a bunch of hoops to get it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right. A profit and loss can either tell a really great story to a
Hmm.
buyer, or sometimes it can leave them guessing
Yeah.
as well. And that's a completely different experience. And if a buyer can kind of look at a P&L and really get a good feel for the business, then naturally they're gonna be more inclined in finding
Hmm.
out more about it,
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, it's a useful tool that can just help you lay out how your business is doing, is really what it comes down to. Andy, do you have another question for us?
Yeah, I got one final one here from Peter, who is asking what kind of the number one common issue that we see in P&Ls or problem with P&Ls. I mean, we touched
Hmm.
on a couple of these earlier, but I think one thing I'll mention that more an issue for sellers when they come to submit their business than it is for us. But if somebody hasn't ever put a P&L together before, and the business is a couple of years old, that's a lot of work. And particularly if you're trying to find old supplier invoices or any old kind of financial documents that you need to fill the document in. I mean, that can be tough. So we're kind of back at that same point again, which is just get a routine, get
Hmm.
a habit, get this in place every month, and then that kind of process when you do come to submitting your business, if you ever want to sell it, is going to be way less
Yeah,
friction.
it's just, I mean, no matter what you do, procrastinating is not often the way to go about things. And, you're talking to, when it came to schoolwork and stuff, you're talking to a grade A procrastinator with some things, but it's stressful when you don't have everything done when it's due, when a prospective buyer gets on the phone with you and wants to see this data. If you don't have it, I mean, that doesn't help the sale. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I've got kind of one more question just come in actually from Nicholas, which was what kind of contract do you sign with your supplier in China before you start your FBA business? I mean, that's kind of a tricky question, and the specifics of a supplier is maybe a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, but I can make a general point on contracts. And I mean, that is that anything that you have in place with a supplier is going to be helpful. If you've got something written that I mean, obviously any kind of exclusivity would be great, but any kind of formal contract that lays out the terms is going to be really, really helpful information.
Yeah, what you don't want is to start your business, find a supplier, find products that you want to sell, and have them ship them to the Amazon warehouse. Be 3 months down the line, you're starting to gain a little traction, your brand is growing, people find you, and then suddenly the supplier pulls the plug. I mean, having a written document to be able to say, hey, for the next 12 months for sure, we will, have this deal, is definitely something that you want to do. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's not terribly likely. I mean, the supplier is a business too, trying to make money, and obviously canceling your sale is not something that will help them make more money. But I mean, you never know.
Sure.
And having a formal document ready to just be able to be like, no, we have this deal, and to ensure that you're going to keep getting your products is always better than not having any sort of formal agreement.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, there might be additional stuff that you want to have in a contract as well. Maybe you might have what's an acceptable fault rate outlined and stuff like that, and what are the repercussions if kind of you go above that. So there could be quite a lot in a contract. We do have one more final question actually from Dennis, which is last one, I think. If somebody plans multiple businesses, what do you suggest in terms of accounting for each? Like, should it be separate accounting for each one? And yeah, I mean, my take on that would be if they're separate businesses and they're not really linked, then definitely some sort of separation in the accounting is really important. Now, that's not always straightforward, because if you have certain software or certain costs that you spread across your business, you're obviously not going to buy one for this, one for that. So that's not going to be 100%, but definitely some form of separation in the accounting that is going to enable you to pull a financial document specifically for one business is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, and it's also, if the businesses are truly separate, and what if you want to sell one of the businesses and you're keeping the other two, then I mean, you need to have that profit and loss statement for that business so that a prospective buyer can go ahead and look and see what is going on with this business, this asset that I'm trying to buy, without seeing the other assets that they are not trying to buy.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And again, as we've said a couple of times, that's also true of when you're running your business day to day as well. If they're separate businesses, you want to be able to look at one in isolation and make some decisions around that, kind of based on the information just about that business.
And I mean, if they are connected, having some sort of overall document would not be a bad idea as well, to be able to just kind of look at everything you have. But having, it kind of goes back to earlier when we were talking about if you're in different countries, having different documents with the different kind of currencies and different sales in those countries, and then having it compiled into one overall document is, not a bad idea. So if you have multiple businesses, have them compiled into one overall statement that will help you yourself just look at everything you have and be like, okay, this business is bleeding money, this business is doing well. And then within those businesses, though, you definitely want to have those individual statements to be able to break it down. With this business, where is it bleeding money?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You nailed it.
So I think that's gonna wrap it up for us today. Andy, thanks for taking the time to be on with me today. This is fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I've enjoyed it. No worries at all. I hope it was useful for people.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
definitely want the information that we're giving to be useful. And so with that said, I mean, tune in every single week. And if you have questions that you want us to answer, it doesn't necessarily have to be about the topic that we have. So if there's a piece of information that you need, feel free to ask it to us, and we'll answer it to the best of our abilities. And we want this information that we're giving to be super helpful to you. Andy, can you just kind of recap where are you and what are you doing?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm in Medellin, Colombia, just coming up for 3 p.m. Still got a little bit of vetting work to do today. So even though it's a nice sunny afternoon, can't quite clock
Mm.
off yet. So yeah, this has been a nice change of pace for an hour doing
Yeah,
this.
so again, I am Jake Davis. I am going to be on every single week with different members of the Empire Flipper staff. If you love Andy, shoot us messages. Tell us you want more of that beard. We'll get him back on here, and uh, you know, yeah, we'll have him back. But we are also going to have other Empire Flippers members to be talking about different topics that they are experts in to really try to give you the best information that we can. So, with all of that said, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and have a fantastic day.
Cool, awesome. Thanks a
Yep,
lot,
thanks
everyone.
everyone. See you later.